Noel and I are back for another episode of TFC Unplugged. Here to recap last night's 1-1 draw versus the Columbus Crew.
What's going
What's your
on?
take, Noel? You know what? I guess like most most TFC fans, we were happy we didn't lose last night.
Yeah, that's part of it too, right? Is the let's not lose, let's celebrate a draw. So, you know, it's. I will say though, like last night, it was a perfect example of what TFC's missing, and it's a good example of there is improvement and there is a change, a noticeable change. I think you said it to somebody in the stands yesterday that there is a noticeable change since the Italians left, and there is a more consistent unit and a consistent effort. And I think that's very fair to point out because, I know some people do bag on us for about like not being positive, but I think what you're seeing is you are seeing progression. It's a slow progression. And then what you're also seeing is them start to shed some of the players that either don't want to be here or the players that need to leave or are going to leave anyway, and we're at least getting something for them. So, yeah, we are seeing some progression. But, back to the game, again, I said last night, very similar to kind of what we said about some of the Premiership games. You've got to score first, I think, for TFC to have a shot. But I also did say to you and to one of the MLSE guys last night that I think we'll get a draw out of this game because I think we are good when we're against really good teams. We're more defensively compact. And we were very, the goal comes in. It's a nice goal. But at the end of the day, TFC were under the cosh for long periods of time. And then,
Yeah.
they were playing a little bit more counter-attacking style. And, I said the longer it stayed 1-0, the more we have a shot to nick a goal, right? And do what we did against Philly, do what we've done against a couple other teams. I think like Vancouver was like that too. So I think there was definitely some positives. Let's start with the biggest one. I'll say the debutant came on. Number 99, the new Owusu. And he first touch, man, on his debut, scores a goal. And I'm getting this Tosaint Ricketts vibes. That's what I've got. I don't know if it's his style, his long legs that, I can tell you, Ricketts is one of those players I used to bag on constantly. I'm like, the guy can't score with his foot, right? Or with every other body part known to man, but he was clutch in moments. And it's not since he left and retired that I really have actually appreciated him. So if he's listening or watching, Ricketts, I
Yeah.
appreciate you now. Sorry if I called you any names before, but like he used to just throw himself and, the ball would come off his thigh and go in. It came off his right kneecap and he'd go in. But hey, the guy took his chance, right? One chance, one goal, bang.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah, and I believe it was his first touch.
It was, yeah.
Right. So shout out so his full name is Jules-Anthony Vilsaint. Um, so yeah, he's been in Toronto for what, 2-3 days,
Yeah.
and gets thrown in there in the second half, and scores the equalizer. And it was a very nice finish, right? Good run, good movement.
Composure. That's what it was.
Very composed. Yep. That's kind of what we want to see from our strikers. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it's like that's a number 9. Like that's a number 9 finish where you're running into the box. All right, it's a low cross. I just need to get my foot on it. I don't need to try to place it anywhere. I just need to
On
hit it.
target.
Yeah.
On target. And like, so I want to talk about the 9s because Ola Brynhildsen, I think the groans in the stadium twice last night when he had there was an absolute banging move and he just needed to just pull the trigger and he muffed it up royally. and the groans in the stadium were loud. And then he had a couple of chances. He didn't do a lot. Again, he's 2 in 20. I'm done with it, right? Like this is you can't go up the league if your strikers can't score more than 2 goals, right? Like it's an issue. And then we figured out that Columbus high line was prime for whipping the ball over the top and letting DeAndre Kerr run in behind. Kerr got through, glorious chance, and he puts it wide, and you just look and go, oh, we're not going to score tonight. And then Vilsaint came on and one touch, put it on net and on target, and bang, it's in. I think it summed it up, right? It's what we you need strikers. And I'm gonna say, because somebody was giving me grief last week about Kerr, that my take on putting him back on the wing. Well, they played a 2 up front yesterday, essentially, right? That's what we were looking at.
It looked that way.
It looked like that. It looked like Bryn Hilton was dropping deep, and they were switching it up a little bit. And I thought the way that they were spread out wide, DeAndre kept going a little bit further out wide than he did centrally. And I thought that was his best game of the season. And I know people will disagree with me. Again, he didn't finish the opportunities he had. But in terms of work rate, effort, and making and stretching the defense and keeping the defense honest, I thought he did a very good job. I thought he had a very good game.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. He is a winger. He plays like a winger. He looks happier when he's playing out wide of the goal and not in between the sticks. And that number 9 really needs to be a guy that sits between the posts. And I'm going to keep banging on about it because I think that's exactly why I think you get the best out of DeAndre is if he's on that side, on the wings, and he's coming into the goal. I can't say it enough. Like, it's just, he looks more comfortable naturally as a player. And we're always on this trying to convert people into God knows what they aren't supposed to be when they've played the whole life in a certain way on a certain position. And then we sometimes think we know better than everybody else and we can convert them. And he looked comfortable and he looked a threat deep behind the ball in behind. And Mihailovic came and was playing some balls. Also put 2 really nice balls through in for him. That's the thing. The only thing Oso really did yesterday was put a couple of nice balls in for Kerr. But we screaming for a 9. I think if TFC had a 9 that could score, I think they would have won that as a smash and grab last night.
For sure.
Right? I think that was.
Well, I mean, even if you want to look back at the goal that we conceded, it was just, we tried to clear the ball. It ended up being a bit of I guess a turnover clearance where it literally fell right to Rossi on a silver platter. And he had a nice finish, but it was literally like the ball fell into him in the perfect position inside the 18. On a better defensive clearance, that may not have happened. And, things could have turned out differently, but it was literally just, one of those mental lapses, or just like I said, one of those moments where it wasn't as if it was through built up play where they got him wide open. It was through our mistake that led to that first goal.
And that's the story of our season, right? I think that's a lot of our own self-inflicted. If you can cut out those mistakes, I think we'd be a lot further up the league. And I think that's, kind of things that they have to kind of look at and work on and move towards doing. I will say, though, I said this to you last night, Columbus plays some beautiful football, like in terms of flowing, passing, their movement, that everybody knows their role, everybody knows their positions. They carved through TFC a couple of times where, again, I think if they had a little bit more firepower yesterday, I think even Columbus, I think they would have scored a couple more, because at times they were just zipping through us like we weren't even there. There's one run where they carved through four TFC players and went clean through untouched, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know what, we got a point and against a very good team, and they keep hanging around in those games against the good teams, which is a good positive sign. It just you need some quality. Look, and I guess we have to talk about the departures because that's been the main topic of the week. So when we saw the lineup, we both looked at each other and was like, okay, this is an interesting one. And then I said to you, oh, Flores isn't in the lineup. And he's not on the bench. But I'm sure I saw him in the training video on Friday or Thursday or whatever day it was recently. And so then I tweeted, oh, here we go. I think we're going to probably trade him for some GAM. He is out of contract at the end of the season. So, I think as everybody's seen what TFC have done this week, we obviously moved on from Matty Longstaff. We then traded away his international spot the next day into Miami for them to stockpile more international talent. And we built up, I think, 1.25 million in GAM, up to 1.255 million in GAM. So I said I wouldn't be surprised if he's not. Then I think Touchline TFC reported last night that he was away for Derby. Flores was away for personal reasons, which was the same thing as Mihailowicz.
That's according to to Robin Fraser, right?
Oh, Robin Fraser, yeah, was it? So right. Yeah, I think that's what they were talking about. So, and then we get the news. Then we get the news that he is in talks with a team from Saudi, nothing from the club, and so we expect that to be announced tomorrow.
But I also saw something since you and I last talked about this that so he is in negotiations, but since he signed to 2026, the club will get something out of it. Well, probably won't be much, but we will get make a little bit of money off of this deal, which will open up another international roster slot, right?
Absolutely.
Which I think so. Okay, before we talk about the fact that this move could open up another spot, we'll have more money. You and I have mentioned that there's very few players that have value. And I actually had more anticipated a team in the league looking at trying to get a player like Debbie Flores, right? Especially, a team that wants to have a solid, mid going into that playoff run. But at the end of the day, I don't really care where he goes. I like what he's done for.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you, somebody just sent me the team. It's Al Najma FC, and it's the team Romeo Kyoto plays for.
Yes, so apparently, well, they have the same agent, and so that's kind of why what I remember seeing something about that. So either way, you know what? It is what it is. He's going for his payday. Can't blame him. That's life-changing money that he's going to receive by playing out in Saudi. And like I said, for TFC, he wasn't going to be part of the future. Again, if we get some money out of this, opens up a roster slot, probably opens up for what you believe is a move that's going to happen this coming week, or at least before the window closes, right? So you think another midfielder's on his way in?
Yeah, I think when you start looking at what they're unloading, Matty Longstaff, obviously Derby Flores, you look at the midfielder. I think it's a defensive midfielder. I do think they are. I do have this belief that they are trying to recreate a little bit of that 2017, which I think that midfielder, you need someone that can dictate the game. You need someone that can break away and score some goals. I think you also need someone that can work on the attacks, right? And I think what they are looking at is having, quality, not quantity of midfielder is what I think they're trying to do. And I think they're unloading them and they're trying to stockpile GAM because I think what they want is two players. And I think one of those is a midfielder, whether that's a DP, whether that's a high TAM, whether that's whatever. I do think they're going to try and get two players in because I do think they're going to try and build a solid foundation because at the end of the day, they've got to put bums in seats next year. And if you finish second from bottom, You're going to have a press conference at the end of the year that's going to be ugly. You're going to get lots of questions. It's not always going to be a positive tone. I think what they want to be able to do is, because if you look at those end of season interviews, the last couple of years, they've been toxic, right? There's, finger pointing, there's accountability, there's questions about the locker room. So to set the tone, I think what they want to do is be like, look, we've got in Mihailovic, we've got in player X, and we've got in player Y. And these three guys are the foundations, and we're going to build a team around them. And that's why it's going to be exciting for TFC fans in 2026. That's what they're doing. And I think that's the right thing to do. I do, because I am harsh on them. And I'm not, I support Toronto FC. I don't support Jason Hernandez and Robin Fraser. There's a difference, right? A lot. And when people get all excited about I couldn't give a crap. I don't want to know who they are, to be honest. I want them to just do their job. That's what I want. And I want the team to be on the pitch to be better. And at the end of the day, people are like giving him flowers for getting rid of players. Well, that's your job. I'll give you, when you recruit well and we have a team that's on the pitch competing, that's where I get frustrated with, because I'm not about player FC. I'm not about the individuals. I'm not about the team that represents that badge and that jersey and the supporters. That's what I'm about, not, the management crew and I get tired of it, right? So, but they need to do better.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about that. And it, right since they've gotten rid of those two players, the Italian connection, things have, like I said, have changed. So I'm not one that wants to see them rush when it comes to our DPs. So if they add one between in this window, one more in this window, I'm okay with that. I don't necessarily feel we need to fill them all now. As long as we're filling key areas, I don't care if they're a DP or just, rather a regular signing, right? Because I still think we need some defensive strength. Because again, I don't think our core that we see right now, especially if we look at the guys that start returning next year, or do you want returning? Right, Petretta, Roasted, Long, and Larea, right? Like Long is getting.
We do need a commanding center back. That's your point, right? We need a commanding center back that's prime, right? You need
because we have a lot of good young and up and coming center backs, guys that I think will be able to do the job, but you need somebody around them to lead them and help them develop, right? And Long's done a great job of it, but I think he's reached that point with us. So I think it's time that we get the next to fit that mold and be the main man.
Yeah, you need like a prime Walter Zimmerman kind of type player. And I think I was looking at this today because I was looking if that's something that's doable. There is some options within MLS where you could make some trades with, some money and whatever else, but you do need a commanding center back. Yeah, I think, there's a couple of young guys that will do really well, which that's good. But you do need that Drew Moore kind of leadership in that back line. I do think we need a CDM. Like, look, Derby Flores is a 6, right? He's a solid 6. He's a destroyer. But this is where I think TFC is in this. We need to get that Michael Bradley role where you essentially get someone that can sweep up in front of the back four, but also then that person that can then pick a pass. Because we had Derby Flores for a little bit, and he's had some really great games, but he's had a lot of games where he's given the ball away and cost us goals. So I think if you look at what they're trying to do, I think that's why I think you're going to end up there. Obviously, the Josh Brownhill rumors continue. Again, he posted on Instagram. I guess he's still on this side of the world. He posted it with a Drake video today. So, everyone's 2 and 2 to make 4-ish. Right. So you know what? At the end of the day, if you're going to go and get a guy like that, that can score and is a two-way player, box to box, that can, help Mihajlovic tick. Yeah, you got to get some more defensive help then, right? So if they sign him, like at the end of the day, I think he's kind of in his prime, which is kind of what I moan about the most. We keep either buying washed up or too young to shave, right? I think that's the problem with TFC. We don't really have that in their prime guys. Mihajlovic is in his prime. I think if you go and get a Brownhill and Mihajlovic together, I think you could have a really, really interesting combination there. And, but as I say, I think when they're stockpiling GAM, I think they're going to go and make a splash with somebody that's within the league, not necessarily just outside the league. I think that might be a little bit more key. I think we can expect another, Mihajlovic type deal from somebody. It doesn't necessarily be a DP though.
I think, if we go that route, our next big move in the offseason needs to be a number 9, right? Yes, I do want to see us, add that key, center back. But I think if we can find a real number 9 with the other additions that we're making now and hope to make in the next couple weeks, we could be a drastically improved team going into next season.
Oh, 100%. And the 9 is high on my priority list, right? Like, I think we need a 9. You can't compete in this league without a 9 that can week in and week out bang in goals. And I think we've been missing it since Josie left. Actually, we've been missing it since Josie was here because he was injured all the time. Unfortunately, the last couple of years. So it just didn't work. We need someone that can score week in and week out, but you also do need it's the spine of the team, right? And as I said to you off air, I do think they're looking to try and do that. I think if you look at Mihajlovic, does he take the Giovinco kind of role where he's the goal scorer, goal provider, the conductor, right? I think they're trying to find someone that can do a Michael Bradley. I think they're going to try and find someone that can do a Josie. And that's a formula that's worked for this club. These guys were all either playing on that team or coaching that team. So they know what it is and they know what they want to do. One name I would say, though, is that is out there that they might take a gamble on is a guy like Brooks Lennon. He's obviously out of contract too. He's turned down Atlanta's latest offer. He's been a very solid, very dependable player in this league. And I don't think it would cost more than what a Sigurd Roasted currently costs us right now. And, I think if you can get a player that is US based, that's making less than what Roasted is, then you can let Roasted leave. And I think that's definitely, because, I know there's some comments even just on our Twitter today, just in regards to, I made a comment about Oso. He's 33. His legs are going, right. You need to give him less and less playing time so he can become more of an impact player off the bench, kind of how he was when he was in his younger career. I think he can do that again in an older thing. But I think at the end of the day, I think you've got to look at what they're doing. And yes, we're getting rid of some players. And if we're getting some value, even if it's just a little bit right at the end, we got Matty Longstaff and a guy that got us a point this week, right? And some cash. So it's not a bad deal, but they've just got to spend it wisely. And I just don't think Brynhildson's the answer up front. I don't think Kerr's the answer up front. I do think Kerr has a part to play in this team. I do. If they re-sign him, which I think they will re-sign him, then I think that's not a bad piece for depth and for bench and to grow with experience. But we're going to see what they do. But I think it's, there is positives. There is positives. And, certainly they hung in a game last night. They're a bit fortunate, obviously, because we didn't talk about the disallowed goal. But when it went in, we were like, oh, classic TFC. We worked so hard to get back into a game and then boom. So we dodged a bullet. It's funny because somebody else messaged me and said, please don't say it's a good VAR call because I jinxed it every time I say that. So, but
hey, At the end of the day, we got that VR card, which is rare, so I'll take it and run with it. But you know what? One more thing, and we can. He came up with a couple big saves, especially in the second half, which kept us into this game. And you know, like I said, that first goal can't be blamed on it. It wasn't his fault, but again, he stood on his head when we needed him to. And that type of keeper is hard to find. And I like Gavin, like I said, but I will definitely miss Sean Johnson when he's gone, because he was definitely this. You
You
saw
know
why
what,
we went
Sean?
and got him.
I have an opinion on it. Why has no one that needs a goalkeeper that's in a playoff spot not come for Sean Johnson? Are they blind? Like, we would
But
be rock bottom of this league this season without Sean
yeah,
Johnson. There's no doubt
oh
in my mind on that, because he's been standing on his head like all season. I think he had 4 or 5 games at the start of the season where he was a little bit off, but since then he's kept us in game. All those games that we're on about, oh, we're praising the team for drawing, and we, Philadelphia and for Vancouver and all these
yep,
teams that were top of the league. The
it's
caveat of
him.
that should have a little asterisk that says Sean Johnson kept us in the game, so we stayed at 1-0 to keep us in that,
Yep,
right?
that's fact. That's fact. Like, he's been our savior this season more often than not. And it's when, like, this is when I'm really appreciating when you have a real solid number one, how like the difference maker he can be in a game when the team isn't up to snuff, right? And he's been that guy for us more often than not this season. And like I said, we've talked about him most likely not returning next year. Like I said, he will be missed, right? Because
He's been fantastic.
been a yeah.
Yeah, he's been fantastic, and you can't deny that, right? I don't think anybody that watches this team week in and week out will say that he's any different. He's been top draw, is as advertised on the label, right? You know,
Yeah.
it is a shame that, I don't know. Maybe they do a deal with him for 1 year. We don't know.
And
You
yeah,
know,
I mean, because the thing is, I would like to see a Sean Johnson and TFC in the playoffs, because if you can get, knowing that you have a player like him that can make those saves in a playoff game, or one, where like he can be the reason. Um, I don't want to see him gone, but I would not be surprised if, like we said, we've heard rumors. We could be wrong, and you know what? This would be the rumor where, if we're wrong, I'll be happy if we're wrong.
no, but I think there's also when because we heard that at the same time, right? So, but I think this is also, that was just before the Italians went there, right? So I think there's, as we mentioned it, there's a little bit of a shift in the
Playing well,
yeah.
bad weather. Like, it wasn't, yeah, like it was at a time where things just weren't looking good,
Look,
right?
at the end of the day, if we give him 1 more year and he's like, hey, I like what you guys are doing here, and then hey, he may be the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs next year. But I think we got to see what they're going to do. And at the end of the day, I think
Yeah.
I'm me, I'm not big on handing out praise to the front office at this club, because they've it's the reason why I constantly joke that I'm going to make us all it's the hope that kills your t-shirts next year, because I have hope again. And it's the worst thing and it's the best thing and the worst thing, right? Because
Yeah.
you kind of go, all right, I'm seeing something. We're playing better. We're a unit. We're doing good. And I'm waiting for the
And
Wile E. Coyote just to go and blow it up,
yeah.
right? Like, it's the TFC way. I'm just waiting for it to go bang all the time. And I do generally hate that about it, right? It does
Yeah.
generally kill me.
But as I said, there's a different vibe right now. So let's enjoy that vibe. We like the moves and the things that have been happening in the past, ever since they got rid of the Italian. So I'm put this way. You and I talked a lot about, you know what? if we don't see enough this year, you know what? There's gonna be a lot of questions going into next season. I without even having to ask you, I know that both of us will be back in our seats next season down in the South End, right? We're already
Yeah.
confident enough that we're gonna buy into another season. So
I'm always the eternal optimist. Like at the end of the day, like as much as I
we're like, all right, you know what?
moan,
I'm gonna
as
give it
much
some
as I
time.
moan about it, I'm still gonna do it because I can't stop it. It's like a drug, right? I'm addicted to this. It's part of who we are. It's why we're passionate. It's why we do this, right? We
Yeah,
talk about soccer so much. We spend all it. We don't do this because we want to be famous or we want to make money. We do this because this is what we love, right? And I don't think everybody always gets that. But sometimes, like if I don't have this, I'm still going to watch the games. I'm still going to message you. I'm still going to complain to God knows everybody. It's
yeah.
what we are, and it's just I would like to be. I do generally miss because the other day I sat with making for this just for when the off season comes. We have some content and some some videos, and I was putting together a video montage of all TFC's like greatest moments, right? And I watched it like 15 times in a row. Why? Because I miss those days where we just scored and BMO is like electric. I miss that. And I know it will get there someday. Just want it to be like sooner than, before I turn like 90, right? So,
Yeah.
somebody pointed out to me yesterday in the stands, we're only 2 years away from a 10-year anniversary of 2017, which I wanted to kick the person and smack him over the head with a megaphone. Like,
put put it this way, Noel. I didn't have gray hair last time TFC had a winning season.
neither did I. I just want to point that out. Like I just like come on,
Yeah.
and that's why we do it, right? But at the end of the day, there is improvement. We are getting better. We are starting to see some life from the office, and I think that is a positive. Will I give them their flowers? No, they got to sign some real quality. And then, and I do generally believe I'm happy, and if you know me, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to admit I've been wrong, but I'm fairly rarely wrong. I'm very, very good at telling you I told you so. But I'm hopeful that they can get this done properly because I've been on fire lately. I did jokingly say, "Hey, we're going to sell Matty Longstaff's international TAM spot tomorrow," and
And
boom.
yeah,
And then
you
I
hit
got
it in the
Derby
mark.
Forest. So I'm on a roll.
You know what? You and I've had some good. Well, hey, I had a good day on Friday. You had a good day yesterday, I guess. So you know what? We'll call it. We'll leave it at that, and leave on a good note and
Yeah,
a
we
good streak.
can.
So, folks, as usual, hit that like button or thumbs up, depending on what you want to call it. We appreciate all the likes and all the feedback we're getting. And of course, if you aren't already, make sure you're subscribed.
Yeah,
That's it for me.
absolutely. Yeah, that's good for me too. Thanks for watching. We will be back at some point next week. I'm going to enemy
It,
territory. I'm off to Vancouver, so
well, you know what? Yeah, you're returning next Sunday, and then you've got a lot of driving to do. So we'll have to coordinate when we record again. But we'll figure something out. Hopefully, we can. Hopefully, it's not too late. But yeah, we will be back.
yeah, exactly. Thanks for watching, guys.
Have a good night. Peace out.
Like what you hear? Smash that like button, subscribe now.